My 15-year-old cousin accused me of SA to avoid being grounded. 9 years later, she finally confessed. 9 years ago, my entire family blocked me after my cousin accused me of graping her when she was a kid. I was 22 and gaming with friends when my mom broke the cardinal sin of the family. She called me again after I didn't answer her first call. Calling twice in my family meant this was absolutely urgent. When I answered the phone, I heard chaos and screaming before she went to another room. She was sobbing and asked if I had something to confess about Eve. I said no. Eve was my younger cousin who I hadn't seen in years. That's when Mom screamed that Eve said when she was 9 and I was 16, I came into my room while she was playing and regularly assaulted her. She gave them detailed descriptions of everything. I couldn't breathe. I kept saying it wasn't true, but my mom just kept screaming, "Did you do this?" over and over. I screamed no back each time, but she wouldn't listen. The call ended with both parents on speaker saying they never wanted to see me again. My sisters texted calling me disgusting, then blocked me. I tried calling everyone, but they all blocked me immediately. My dad sent one final text telling me to stop contacting them. The next year destroyed me. I waited every day for police to arrest me. I stopped eating and failed at job interviews. I started drinking heavily and doing oxy. I got violent but lived alone, so I just destroyed my apartment. When neighbors called cops about me smashing glasses, I convinced them I dropped it. I spent nights planning how to hurt Eve and make it look like an accident. Sometimes I fantasized about actually doing what she accused me of, but worse. The darkest thoughts you can imagine consumed me. Finally got a job in late 2015, which gave me structure. Slowly got sober and bought a house last year. Been on antidepressants that replace dark thoughts with numb ones. Tried dating twice, but explaining why I have no family makes women run. My therapist is the only woman I really talk to. Last week, my mom texted out of nowhere. First contact in 9 years. She said they missed me and updated me about my sisters having kids. Then yesterday, another text dropped the bomb. At a family gathering last month, Eve was downplaying what happened to her after it was brought up. My mom actually got suspicious and pressed her about it a little, and she finally admitted nothing ever happened, and she probably dreamt it. The family exploded. My mom and dad went out back and just started while crying. My parents told me they're appalled and angry at her. They told everyone the truth and want me back in their lives. I haven't responded to them though. Old memories are flooding back and I'm shaking with rage. Part of me wants to systematically destroy each of their lives, starting with Eve. Make them feel a fraction of what I felt. Then this morning, Eve texted me directly. 9 years of silence and she texts like nothing happened. She said she knows I hate her, but needs to tell me the real truth. It wasn't a dream or confusion. When she was 15, her mom caught her sneaking out to meet her boyfriend. She was going to get grounded for the whole summer and miss camp. So she told them she was acting out because of past trauma. When they pushed for details, she made up the story about me. She picked me because I was far away at university and barely around. She figured I'd deny it and everyone would move on. She never expected them to cut me off completely. She tried to take it back a few days later, but they said she was just protecting me. The lie spiraled out of control and she was too scared to admit it. She's been in therapy for years dealing with the guilt. She ended with, "I'm so sorry, and I know you'll never forgive me, but I wanted you to know it was never about you." I screenshot everything and now I'm deciding how to use it. My therapist is on vacation for 3 weeks. The rage is consuming me. I've been sober 4 years, but all I want is to get blackout hammered and show up at their doors. I know exactly how I'm going to handle this. Time for them to understand consequences. I sat in my kitchen at 3 a.m., laptop open with Eve's messages displayed on the screen. My hands trembled as I read her confession again. 9 years. 9 fucking years of my life destroyed because she didn't want to miss summer camp. The kitchen light flickered overhead, casting shadows that matched the darkness churning inside me. Across town, Eve lay awake in her bed, phone clutched in her hand. She checked it obsessively, jumping at every notification sound. Her engagement ring caught the moonlight as she refreshed our message thread for the 100th time. Still no response from me. She bit her lip and typed another message, then deleted it, then typed again. I forced myself to close the laptop and stand up. My body moved on autopilot, making coffee I wouldn't drink. The rage had to go somewhere. I grabbed my car keys. At 6 a.m., I parked outside Eve's apartment building. The morning was cold and wet from overnight rain. I sat in my car, engine off, just waiting. I knew her routine from social media stalking over the years. She always ran at 6:15. Right on schedule, Eve emerged from the building in her running gear. She stretched by the entrance, earbuds in, completely unaware. Then she turned toward the parking lot and our eyes met. She froze mid-stretch. Her running shoes squeaked on the wet pavement as she backed away slowly. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at her through the windshield. Her face went white. She stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the curb, then turned and ran back inside. My phone buzzed immediately. Eve's name lit up the screen with a text. "Please just say something, anything." I ignored it and opened LinkedIn on my phone. Her profile showed she worked at a local marketing firm, senior account manager. The irony wasn't lost on me. She built a career on crafting narratives while I lost everything to her lies. Her engagement announcement from last month stared back at me. Tom Williams, investment banker, clean-cut guy with a perfect smile. Another text from Eve. "I know you're reading these. I can see the read receipts." My phone rang. Marcus. Shh. I'd completely forgotten about our morning coffee meeting. First time I'd missed it in 2 years. I let it go to voicemail. I screenshotted Eve's confession from last night and her LinkedIn profile. Then I opened my text thread with my mother. Her messages asking me to come back sat there unanswered. My thumb hovered over the attachment button. One screenshot. No context. Let her figure it out. My phone battery flashed 6%. The low battery warning added urgency to my decision. I hit send. The response was immediate. "Mom called. I declined. She called again and again. By the time I started driving to work, she'd called 47 times in 10 minutes. My phone buzzed constantly on the passenger seat, the screen lighting up with "Mom" over and over. I pulled into the warehouse parking lot and my stomach dropped. Eve's white Honda sat in visitor parking. What the fuck was she doing at my job? Inside, I saw her through the office window, talking animatedly to my boss. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. My boss, Bill, had his concerned face on, the one he used when someone's grandmother died. I clocked in and tried to walk past the office, but Bill spotted me and waved me in. Eve wouldn't look at me. Bill pulled me aside near the water cooler. His voice was low and sympathetic. "Hey, I'm sorry to hear about the death in the family." Eve explained everything. "Take whatever time you need." I kept my voice controlled and level. "There was no death. She's lying." The security camera's red light blinked overhead, recording everything. Bill's face went from sympathetic to confused. He glanced between Eve and me. Eve finally looked at me, eyes wide and pleading. "I was just worried about you. You weren't answering anyone's calls." I walked away without another word and headed to my station. Bill followed me, clearly unsettled, but I just started my shift inventory like nothing happened. Eve left quickly after that. During my first break, my phone had blown up with Facebook notifications. Eve had messaged my work friends, claiming she was worried about my mental health. She asked them to check on me, said I'd been acting strange, and the family was concerned. Jake from shipping approached me at the loading dock. "Hey man, your cousin stopped by. She seemed really concerned about you. Such a caring cousin. You okay?" My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack, but I just nodded and kept working. At lunch, I sat in my car and opened Facebook. I hadn't looked at Eve's profile in months. Her 2015 posts were still public. There it was, her survivor post from right after the accusation. Hundreds of supportive comments. People calling her brave, offering prayers. One comment from 3 weeks ago caught my eye. Tom Williams writing about being proud of her strength. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, then saw the preview. "This is Tom Williams. I know the truth now. We need to talk." Before I could process that, another text came through. "Dad, this time. Your mother is hysterical. Eve says you've been stalking her for months. We're considering a restraining order." I wanted to throw my phone through the windshield. Instead, I opened our old family group chat from before everything went to hell. I scrolled back years. There was Eve asking me for help with her algebra homework, calling me her favorite cousin when I visited from college. Her last message to me before the accusation, asking me to bring her a souvenir from university. My phone rang. Human Resources Department. I let it go to voicemail and listened immediately. "This is Janet from Human Resources. We've received a concerning email about you from a family member. We need to schedule a mandatory meeting for tomorrow morning to discuss some allegations about your stability and history. Please call me back to confirm." I walked back inside, and my supervisor, Mike, pulled me aside. "Hey, heads up. That woman who was here earlier sent some pretty serious emails to HR. She seemed very convincing. Mentioned something about violence toward women. Just wanted you to know what you're walking into tomorrow." After work, I drove to my parents' neighborhood. Not to their house. I wasn't ready for that. But to Mrs. Chen's house next door. She'd always been kind to me. Even sent a card saying she didn't believe the accusations. Mrs. Chen invited me in for tea. Her hands shook as she poured. Whether from age or nervousness, I couldn't tell. "Your parents told everyone you'd been getting help for your problem," she said quietly. "But I never believed you had a problem to begin with." That evening, I created a throwaway email account from the library computer. I attached the screenshots of Eve's confession and sent them to Tom Williams' work email, which I found on his company website. Then, I immediately deleted the account. At 11 p.m., I couldn't help myself. I drove past Eve's apartment complex. Tom's BMW sat in visitor parking. Even from the street, I could hear shouting from her second-floor unit. A window slammed shut. My phone lit up with a text from Eve. "I'm telling everyone you doctored those screenshots." I was still sitting in my car processing that when headlights pulled up behind me. I tensed, ready for confrontation, but it was Amy, my sister Amy. She got out of her car, and even in the streetlight I could see her mascara was streaked. She knocked on my window. I rolled it down but didn't say anything. "Mom showed me the screenshot," Amy said, her voice shaking. "I've been thinking about that time Eve lied about me stealing her iPad. Remember? She was so convincing, even had details about when and how I did it. Then we found it under her bed a week later." She glanced at my passenger seat and noticed my packed gym bag by the door. "Were you planning on going somewhere?" I shook my head. "Just like to be prepared." Amy got in the passenger seat without asking. She did this stuff all the time as a teenager. False illness claims before tests, fake injuries before family events she didn't want to attend. Remember when she said she had appendicitis right before Grandpa's 80th birthday? The hospital found nothing wrong. My phone buzzed. Tom Williams again. She admitted it to me. "I'm done. She doesn't know I'm talking to you." I showed Amy the text. She grabbed my phone and typed back before I could stop her. "Can you record her if she admits it again?" Tom's response was immediate. "Already thinking the same thing. She's been spiral texting me all night. She's mentioned having proof you stalked her. I know it's bullshit." Amy handed my phone back. "This is going to get uglier before it gets better." The next morning, Eve had posted on Instagram a black square with white text about toxic family members trying to rewrite history. The hashtags made me sick. #survivor, #my truth, #healing journey. Within an hour, 3 cousins had texted me asking if the post was about me. One mentioned Eve had been acting weird lately at family functions. I was walking into work when I got another text from Tom. "Meeting you at the diner on 5th Street at noon. I have something you need to hear." I arrived at the diner early and took a booth in the back corner. My hands wrapped around a coffee cup I didn't intend to drink. The waitress, Catherine, recognized me from my regular visits and gave me a sympathetic nod. She'd seen me here plenty of mornings after rough nights. Tom Williams Williams walked in exactly at noon. He looked exhausted, his usually perfect banker appearance disheveled. Dark circles under his eyes told me he hadn't slept. He slid into the booth across from me and pulled out his phone. He showed me a voice recording app with dozens of files dated from the past 2 nights. He explained that after receiving my email, he'd confronted Eve. She'd broken down, admitted everything, then immediately tried to spin new versions of the story. He'd recorded all of it. He played one recording where Eve practiced different explanations. In one version, she claimed I'd been harassing her recently. In another, she said I'd threatened her family. Each iteration got more elaborate, more damaging. The manipulation was methodical, calculated. Tom handed me a folder with printed emails between Eve and her best friend Chloe. They discussed contingency plans for if the truth ever came out. Eve had written detailed strategies for maintaining her victim status, including claims of recent stalking and threats. Before I could respond, the diner door chimed. Eve walked in, scanning the room frantically. Catherine immediately stepped in her path and loudly announced she didn't serve liars. Eve's face flushed as other patrons turned to stare. She spotted us and tried to approach, but Catherine physically blocked her. Eve left quickly, but not before shooting me a look of pure hatred. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Bella. Amy had brought her to my house that morning. She wanted to talk. I met them at my place after leaving the diner. Bella was crying before she even got inside. She pulled out a journal from 2015 and handed it to me with shaking hands. She'd documented Eve's behavior patterns throughout their teenage years, lying about teachers, faking panic attacks, manipulating family members for attention. Entry after entry showed a clear pattern of deception. Bella admitted she'd suspected Eve was lying about me, but had been too scared to speak up. The family's reaction had been so severe, so immediate. She'd convinced herself she must be wrong. That afternoon, I got a Facebook message from Rachel, Eve's college roommate. She'd seen Eve's Instagram post and recognized the manipulation tactics. She had her own proof, screenshots of Eve bragging about destroying someone who'd crossed her. The messages were from our sophomore year of college. Eve had written detailed plans about how she'd ruin someone's life if they ever ignored her. One message made my blood run cold. My cousin learned not to ignore me. I responded carefully to Rachel, maintaining a professional tone despite my rage. She offered to send everything she had. Within an hour, I had chat logs showing Eve's history of false accusations, including one against a professor who'd given her a bad grade. Meanwhile, I had to deal with the HR complaint. I wrote a measured response, CCing a lawyer friend who'd offered to help. I explained the situation factually, included the evidence of Eve's confession, and maintained complete professionalism. My co-workers noticed my calm demeanor and started asking questions. Word spread quickly through the warehouse about what was really happening. Eve's desperation was escalating. Tom informed me she'd been placed on administrative leave from her marketing firm after he'd shared information about her history of false allegations. Their wedding, scheduled for 3 weeks away, was obviously canceled. She was spiraling. That evening, I was at the grocery store when I felt someone watching me. I turned to see my mother at the end of the aisle. Her hands shook as she approached. She whispered an apology, tears streaming down her face. She was wearing the necklace I'd given her for her 50th birthday. Before we could talk more, Eve appeared from the next aisle. She'd been following my mother. Eve immediately started talking loudly about how I was manipulating everyone, how I'd doctored evidence. Other shoppers began staring. I stayed silent, remembering the security cameras overhead. My mother looked between us, her face crumbling as she saw Eve's mask slipping. Eve then made an unexpected move. She offered me $50,000 from her trust fund to leave town and start fresh somewhere else. She said it loud enough for others to hear, framing it as generous compensation for a misunderstanding. I pulled out my phone and started recording, making sure she repeated the offer. She did, adding that all I had to do was sign a statement saying the screenshots were fake. That night, I received a text from Aunt Linda, Eve's mother. She wanted to talk. Something wasn't adding up with Eve's constantly changing story. We agreed to meet at a neutral location the next day. Tom continued to be a valuable ally. He revealed that Eve had been in therapy since college for compulsive lying and manipulation. During a previous incident involving false accusations against a teaching assistant, her therapy notes had been subpoenaed. He had copies. The pattern was undeniable. I realized that among the extended family, only my parents and Eve's parents still fully believed her. Everyone else was starting to question the narrative. The family group chat that had been silent for years suddenly came alive with discussions. Rachel sent more evidence. Chat logs from a week ago showed Eve planning her plan B. If caught lying, she'd claim mental illness. She'd researched symptoms, practiced stories about dissociation and false memories. The calculation was chilling. Marcus proved to be a true friend when Eve showed up at my workplace again. She'd waited until she saw me heading to the loading dock. Marcus physically placed himself between us, blocking her from entering. He called security while maintaining his position. He told her he knew a predator when he saw one, and it wasn't me. She left before security arrived, but not before several co-workers witnessed her harassment. That night, Marcus shared his own story. He'd been falsely accused by a family member years ago. He recognized the patterns, the manipulation tactics. We spent hours developing a plan to expose Eve safely without endangering actual survivors or making this about revenge. Tom suggested posting everything online, but I refused. This wasn't about public humiliation. It was about truth and protecting others from her manipulation. We agreed to handle everything privately, documenting each interaction for protection, but not weaponizing social media. 2 days later, Eve cornered me at a gas station. I was filling up when she appeared beside my car. She leaned in close and said that nobody would believe screenshots could not be faked. It was my credibility credibility against hers, and she was the victim in everyone's eyes. I said nothing, just smiled slightly, and pointed up at the security camera directly overhead. Her face went pale. Tom compiled his recordings and created a notarized statement about their conversations. He backed up everything in 3 locations and gave me copies. Eve's confession was now thoroughly documented from multiple sources. The dominoes began falling faster. Eve's best friend Chloe blocked her on everything after Tom shared the truth with her. She sent me an apology, saying she'd always felt something was off, but had chosen to believe her friend. More family members started reaching out, sharing their own doubts and observations from over the years. Amy created a group chat with family members who believed me. She shared Bella's journal entries. The extended family group chat exploded with discussions. Sides formed, but momentum was shifting toward the truth. Eve's supporters went silent one by one as evidence mounted. I scheduled an emergency session with my therapist's colleague. She helped me plan responses that would protect my sobriety while seeking justice. We worked on strategies for handling confrontations without letting anger take control. The work was exhausting, but necessary. Everything came to a head when Eve showed up at my house at 2 a.m., hammered and banging on my door. She screamed that I'd ruined everything, that I'd destroyed her life. I called Marcus and Tom immediately. They arrived within minutes to witness and document her behavior. Eve's erratic actions escalated. She kicked my door, threw a rock at my window, and screamed threats. My elderly neighbor came out and told her this wasn't the first time she'd seen Eve act this way. Several other neighbors watched from their windows. Marcus recorded everything while Tom called the police. When officers arrived, Eve tried to claim I'd invited her over and then locked her out. But with multiple witnesses and her obvious intoxication, her story fell apart. The officers took statements from everyone and advised me to seek a restraining order. The next morning, Eve's employer called Tom to inform him that after an internal investigation, they'd placed her on permanent leave. Her history of false allegations and the current situation made her a liability. Word had spread through their professional network. Mrs. Chen revealed something unexpected. She'd overheard Eve's parents in 2019 discussing plans to check on me to see if I'd changed. She had doorbell camera footage of them sitting in a car outside my house, watching. They'd known where I was for years, but had chosen to maintain the estrangement. I made sure Tom had support through his friend group while maintaining boundaries about not targeting Eve vindictively. I suggested he join a support group for partners of manipulators. He took me up on it and found it helpful. Both of my sisters fully reconciled with me. We started having weekly dinners, sharing 9 years of missed memories. They introduced me to their children, my nieces and nephews I'd never met. The pain of lost time was overwhelming, but the joy of reconnection helped balance it. Family members who'd believed me from the start began reaching out with apologies for not speaking up. They'd been afraid of being cast out too. The family dynamic had been ruled by fear of exclusion, and Eve had weaponized that perfectly. Eve tried one more manipulation. She sent a group text claiming I was turning everyone against her, that she was the real victim being gaslit by a master manipulator. But her constantly changing story undermined her credibility. Family members started pointing out the inconsistencies. During a family dinner that Eve wasn't invited to, she showed up anyway. When confronted about her lies, her mask finally dropped completely. She screamed that I deserved it for ignoring her, for being everyone's favorite, for having the life she wanted. The admission was witnessed by 12 family members. My father saw Eve's true nature when she threatened to destroy me like she had before. His face went white as understanding dawned. The man who'd sent me that final text 9 years ago now saw the truth. He broke down completely. Former family friends who'd distanced themselves started inviting me to gatherings. Eve was no longer welcome after her behavior became known. The social isolation she'd inflicted on me was now her reality. The HR investigation at my work concluded that Eve's claims were unsubstantiated and appeared retaliatory. Her complaint was officially dismissed. My boss apologized for initially believing her, saying she'd been very convincing. I didn't blame him. She'd fooled an entire family for 9 years. A family reunion was scheduled for the following month. Grandma, now 94 and in declining health, wanted everyone there for possibly her last gathering. This became a deadline of sorts. The family had to decide how to handle Eve's presence. More evidence surfaced when Eve's ex-boyfriend from college reached out. She'd falsely accused him of theft when he'd broken up with her. He had a police report proving his innocence. The pattern of false accusations stretched back further than anyone had realized. I compiled a timeline of Eve's lies with dates, witnesses, and documentation. The pattern showed clear escalation over time. What started as small lies for attention had grown into life-destroying false accusations. The family couldn't ignore the evidence. At a family meeting, I presented everything calmly, while Eve became increasingly agitated. She contradicted herself multiple times, changed her story, and eventually started screaming at everyone. Her parents tried to calm her, but she turned on them too. Mom finally admitted she'd known something felt wrong, but had been too shocked to think clearly. The detail and emotion in Eve's initial accusation had overridden her logic. She'd chosen to believe her niece over her son, and the guilt was destroying her. A small family gathering occurred without Eve. The first time in 9 years I'd been welcomed back. I sat in my old spot at the dinner table. Everyone was careful not to mention the lost years, but the empty space where those memories should have been was palpable. Eve made one last desperate play. She claimed she was having panic attacks and heart palpitations from the stress. She needed family support or something bad might happen, but the family recognized the pattern. Amy pointed out that Eve had used identical health scare tactics in high school to avoid consequences. Then came another blow to Eve's credibility. Her employer discovered discovered she'd lied on her application about having a master's degree she'd never completed. The investigation into her background had revealed multiple deceptions. She was formally terminated. My relationships with my siblings were fully restored. We had dinners together, shared stories, tried to fill in 9 years of gaps. The pain of lost time would never fully heal, but we were building something new. Through all of this, I maintained my sobriety. Marcus checked on me daily. My therapist's colleague provided crucial support. The urge to drink was there, especially during the hardest confrontations, but I had tools now that I hadn't had 9 years ago. Eve's world was collapsing, but it was entirely of her own making. Each lie she'd told to cover previous lies had created a house of cards. Now it was all tumbling down. The family she'd manipulated for nearly a decade was finally seeing the truth. I sat in my car outside my childhood home one evening, trying to decide whether to go in. The house looked exactly the same, but everything had changed. 9 years of estrangement couldn't be erased overnight. But for the first time since that phone call while gaming with friends, I had hope that healing was possible. The family meeting was scheduled for that evening at Grandma's house. I arrived to find cars already filling the driveway. Through the window, I could see family members gathered in the living room, their faces tense. Eve's car wasn't there yet. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. My aunts and uncles sat in the same spots they'd occupied 9 years ago when they'd first heard Eve's accusation. The irony wasn't lost on me. Amy squeezed my shoulder as I took a seat. 20 minutes later, Eve arrived with her parents. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes. Her confident facade had crumbled completely. She tried to sit in her usual spot, but Grandma pointed to a chair in the center of the room. Eve's face flushed as she realized she'd be facing everyone. I presented the timeline methodically, each lie documented, each pattern exposed. Family members passed around Bella's journal, Tom's notarized statement, Rachel's screenshots. Eve's parents grew paler with each piece of evidence. Her mother's hands shook as she read her daughter's own words about destroying people who crossed her. Eve's attempts to interrupt were shut down immediately. When she tried to claim the evidence was fabricated, Tom played the recording of her confession. Her voice filled the room, admitting everything, planning new lies. Several family members gasped. One aunt left the room in tears. The breaking point came when Grandma spoke. Her voice, usually soft with age, rang clear and strong. She talked about watching the family tear itself apart, about keeping silent when she'd had doubts. She looked directly at Eve and told her she'd destroyed something precious with her lies. Eve snapped. She jumped up, screaming that I was everyone's favorite, that nobody ever noticed her, that I deserved what I got for ignoring her at family events. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered completely. She admitted planning the lie because I'd missed her birthday party while at university. 9 years of destruction over a missed birthday. Aunt Linda suddenly stood up, her face white. She left the room and returned minutes later carrying an old diary with a floral cover. Her hands trembled as she flipped through pages. She'd found it while packing Eve's old room for renovation. The entries were damning. Detailed plans about making me pay for missing her birthday, for not giving her enough attention. One entry, dated 2 weeks before the accusation, outlined exactly what she'd claim I did. Eve lunged for the diary, but her father grabbed her arm. He took the diary and read aloud, his voice breaking. The premeditation was undeniable. Eve had written about choosing me specifically because I was far away at university, about picking sexual assault because it would guarantee I'd be cut off completely. She'd even practiced what to tell her parents. The room erupted. Family members who'd been holding back their anger finally let loose. They confronted Eve about other lies over the years, faked illnesses, false accusations against teachers, manipulation tactics. The pattern stretched back to childhood. Eve's parents sat frozen, watching their daughter's lifetime of deception unravel. Grandma made the decision that would reshape our family. She stood, using her cane for support, and declared Eve unwelcome at any family gathering until she got serious psychiatric help and made genuine amends to everyone she'd hurt. The family matriarch had spoken. Nobody challenged her. Eve's response was immediate and vindictive. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo, her hand holding a can of spray paint over my car. She threatened that if I didn't publicly forgive her and tell everyone the screenshots were fake, she'd make sure everyone knew I was dangerous. I walked outside without responding. Several family members followed. In the driveway, we found my car already vandalized. Predator spray painted across the hood in red letters, but Eve had made a crucial mistake. Grandma's neighbor had a security camera that covered the driveway. We watched the footage on his phone, Eve spray painting my car just minutes before entering the house. The neighbor, a retired police officer, offered to file a report, but something else was happening. Eve's parents were walking her to their car. Her mother was on the phone with someone, speaking urgently about emergency psychiatric admission. Her father held Eve's arm firmly as she alternated between sobbing and screaming threats. Back inside, the family fractured again. Some members worried we were pushing Eve to a breaking point. My mother wavered, wringing her hands and suggesting we should all just move forward for peace. She kept repeating that Eve was still family, that maybe we could work through this together. The argument split the room. Half wanted to support Eve getting help while maintaining relationships. The other half, led by Amy and Bella, insisted on firm boundaries. Voices raised. Old resentments surfaced. The same dynamics that had allowed Eve's lie to destroy everything were emerging again. I left the house and sat in my vandalized car for over an hour. Through the windshield, I could see my family arguing through Grandma's living room window. 9 years ago, they'd united against me instantly. Now they couldn't agree on how to handle the truth. My phone buzzed with with texts from both sides, each trying to pull me into their position. Marcus arrived, having received my location pin. He surveyed the spray paint damage and shook his head. We sat in silence while I wrestled with the decision. I could push for maximum consequences, press charges, pursue a restraining order, ensure Eve faced legal ramifications, or I could support the mental health intervention her parents were arranging. The decision became clear when Eve's father knocked on my car window. He looked broken, aged a decade in one evening. He explained they were taking Eve for psychiatric evaluation immediately. She'd threatened self-harm in front of them, scratching at her arms until they bled. They needed family support for an involuntary hold. I made my choice. I would support the mental health intervention, but with strict conditions. Eve would need to admit the truth to everyone she'd lied to. The family would maintain a no-contact agreement. She'd have to comply with all treatment recommendations. The boundaries were non-negotiable. Eve's breakdown accelerated in the driveway. She pulled away from her parents and ran toward the street, screaming that she'd rather die than be locked up. Her father caught her before she reached traffic. The scene was chaos. Neighbors watching from windows, Eve fighting against her parents' grip, her mother crying while trying to calm her. An ambulance arrived within minutes. Eve's mother had called during the confrontation. The paramedics approached carefully, speaking in calm tones. Eve alternated between admitting everything and denying it all, claiming we'd driven her to this, that the lies were actually true, that she was the real victim. The inconsistencies in her statements concerned the paramedics enough to support transport for evaluation. As they prepared to leave, Eve made one last manipulation attempt. She told the paramedics I'd been stalking her, that this was all retaliation for rejecting me. But with 12 family witnesses and documentation of her confession, her claims fell flat. The paramedics had seen enough mental health crises to recognize the patterns. The family reconvened at Grandma's house after Eve left. The earlier arguments dissolved into exhausted silence. We sat in the same room where it had all started 9 years ago, processing what had just happened. Grandma broke the silence by asking me what I needed from the family going forward. I laid out my requirements clearly. Full acknowledgement of what had been done to me. Support for Eve getting treatment, but with maintained boundaries. No pressure to forgive or reconcile until I was ready. The family would need to rebuild trust through actions, not words. Most importantly, no more secrets or willful blindness to problematic behavior. 3 weeks later, we gathered again at Grandma's house. Eve arrived with her parents and a therapist from the psychiatric facility. She'd been admitted voluntarily after the initial hold. The therapist explained Eve had been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder requiring intensive long-term treatment. Eve sat in the same center chair, but her demeanor had changed. She appeared medicated, movements slow and deliberate. When asked to address the family, she read from a prepared statement. The words were right, admitting the lies, taking responsibility, but delivered without emotion, mechanical, rehearsed. The therapist revealed Eve's pattern went deeper than anyone had realized. She'd created elaborate false narratives throughout her life, each one escalating when previous lies succeeded. The accusation against me had been her most destructive lie, but far from her only one. Treatment would take years, with no guarantee of full recovery. Family members asked questions. Eve's responses oscillated between taking responsibility and subtle attempts to shift blame. She claimed mental illness made her lie, then admitted she'd known exactly what she was doing. She apologized, then suggested we'd all overreacted. The therapist took notes, occasionally redirecting when Eve tried to manipulate. Grandma spoke last. Her words cut through Eve's performance. She told Eve directly that lies had consequences, that mental illness didn't excuse conscious choices to destroy lives. She reaffirmed the family's decision. Eve would have no contact with family events for a minimum of 5 years. If she completed treatment and made genuine amends, they could reassess. Eve's final manipulation came as expected. She clutched her stomach, claiming severe pain, suggesting the stress might cause her to harm herself if the family didn't show forgiveness. The room's response was unified. Get help, follow treatment, take responsibility. The days of emotional blackmail were over. The therapist escorted Eve out while her parents signed paperwork. She would return to the facility for continued treatment. As she left, she looked back at me once. No apology in her eyes. Just cold calculation, already planning her next move. Some things don't change. I stood in Grandma's backyard afterward with my siblings and cousins. We built a small fire in the old fire pit. I pulled out the folder of evidence, screenshots, printouts, documentation of 9 years of pain. One by one, I fed them to the flames. The ashes scattered in the wind, drifting toward the fence that bordered Eve's childhood home. My mother approached as the last papers burned. She pulled out a photo album from the house, pictures from before the lie, family gatherings, holiday celebrations, my college graduation. 9 years of empty pages followed. She handed me a pen and a stack of recent photos. We began filling the gaps together. 6 months later, I hosted Christmas dinner at my house. The table was full. Parents, sisters, their children, cousins, aunts, uncles. Grandma sat at the head, weaker, but still sharp. An empty chair remained where Eve would have sat, holding a photo of our family from before the lie. A reminder of what deception costs and what truth can restore. My girlfriend helped serve dinner. She knew the whole story, had seen me through the final months of rebuilding. My nieces and nephews called me uncle for the first time. The word felt foreign, but right. Marcus joined us, practically family now. Tom sent a card. He'd found peace in a support group, started dating again. The doorbell rang during dessert. Everyone tensed, but it was just carolers, spreading holiday cheer. We listened from the doorway. My family pressed close together. Not the same as before. Scarred but healing. Broken but mending. Some things can't be restored, 9 years don't come back, but new things can be built on foundations of truth.